Bill Spencer had spared no expense when he chartered the sleek medical jet to spirit his beloved son Liam away from prying eyes straight to the secluded Pacific Research Clinic that promised groundbreaking experimental therapies, a clandestine haven hidden among turquoise atolls and verdant jungle canopies, but fate had other designs. Midway over the uncharted expanse of the Pacific Ocean, and just as dusk was bleeding into night, the seasoned pilot's voice crackled through the headset in Bill's ear. "Engine 2 is failing. We're losing hydraulics. Brace," and then a bone-shuddering jolt hurled Bill into the metal frame as alarms screamed and the cabin lurched violently, throwing Liam's inert form across the reclining medical stretcher strapped to the floor. In that moment, Bill's world narrowed to the primal pulse of adrenaline in his veins as he latched onto the only thought that mattered: protect Liam at all costs. The jet pitched downward like a wounded seabird before slamming through the cloud layer and ripping open the treetops of a forgotten island that rose from the Pacific like a phantom, its black volcanic slopes and ancient palms silhouetted against a bruised sky. When Bill's senses returned, he found himself pinned under a splintered section of bulkhead, pain exploding in his ribs and arm as he realized with grim clarity that multiple bones were fractured. Liam lay a few feet away, still unconscious, his skin pale in the dying light. Bill tried to move, but a hollow crack behind his ribs stole his breath. He dared not shift, for fear of harming his son or himself further. He forced his hand to Liam's wrist and felt the slow, steady tick of heartbeats that told him the boy was alive, but vulnerable. Darkness matured overhead as the night insects began their chorus beyond the twisted wreckage, and Bill, for all his years of battling hostile boardrooms and crushing business rivals, found himself face to face with a challenge he had never imagined. Survival without resources, without help, with only his wits and a son he could scarcely carry. Ignoring the blaze of pain in his shoulder, Bill dragged himself upright enough to scan the surroundings by the flickering glow of a single emergency lantern that had survived the crash. The jungle's edge lay 50 yards away. Beyond it, the black expanse of the ocean lapped against jagged coral reefs. Liam's breathing was shallow but regular, and Bill realized that before anything else, he had to secure water. Memories of his own father's wilderness tales guided him. Search for vines with broad leaves, look for animal tracks leading toward freshwater, collect rainwater if possible. He ripped a length of fabric from the wreckage, splinting his arm against a bent piece of metal, then, ignoring the agony, ventured into the undergrowth, every step a symphony of muscle and bone protesting. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in silver shafts, illuminating the thick ferns and creepers that snaked across mossy boulders. Bill's mind raced as he hacked at vines with a jagged shard of plastic from the console, fashioning makeshift rope to bind a large leaf, using it as a funnel to guide due into a battered stainless steel medical flask he found among Liam's supplies. Each drop he captured felt more precious than a diamond. Back at the crash site, he administered a sip of water to Liam, cupping the flask to his son's lips until the boy swallowed enough to keep his organs from shutting down. As hours bled into days, Bill's routine became a mix of survival and caregiving. He constructed a crude shelter from canopy fronds, tethered to the jet's mangled wing for support, and laid Liam gently on a waterproof stretcher he found in the medical kit. He scavenged for edible plants, breadfruit clusters, and coconut palms, and used Liam's emergency medical supplies to dress the cuts he incurred. He improvised herbal poultices from crushed charcoal and jungle leaves to staunch Liam's fevers, and in the absence of analgesics, he taught himself to administer small doses of the experimental neuromodulating compound Grace Buckingham had provided, a drug originally intended to enhance Liam's neurological recovery, but repurposed now to stave off infection and pain. His hands shook as he measured each drop, aware that one error could be fatal. Some nights, when Liam's fever spiked, Bill held him close, whispering promises of rescue and reunion, clinging to the faint warmth of his son's skin against his chest as a candle in the darkness. Yet survival alone was not the only battle. Haunted by flickers of memory and guilt, Bill began to see Luna Nozawa's face in the dancing shadows of the jungle. He remembered her bright eyes and infectious laughter, the way she clung to him at the hospital door, begging for another story. In the solitude of the night, her voice, once a playful chime, turned accusatory, demanding to know why he had authorized her confinement in that psychiatric ward, why he had turned a blind eye to her terror, why he had refused to acknowledge her cries for help. The island's rustling leaves echoed with her whispers, "You left me to die." Bill would awaken trembling, the taste of regret like dry dust in his mouth. He stumbled to fetch fresh water, only to see Luna's silhouette perched on a log, her hollow eyes accusing him of every misdeed he had ever committed, using his power to manipulate scenes, sacrificing innocence for profit, leveraging tragedies into headlines to boost Spencer Publications' circulation. He lashed out at the hallucination, his voice raw and breaking, "You're not real," yet the shadows did not recede until he sank to his knees, chest heaving, grappling with the weight of 100 unspoken apologies. Each hallucination peeled back another layer of Bill's ruthless exterior. He recalled the time he had used Luna's case as a pawn in his feud with Finn, the cold calculation that had placed her in peril, the opportunistic whispers he had spread about Grace's miracle cure. The island stripped away his defenses until he confronted the man he had become, a patriarch who valued reputation over family, ambition over empathy. And in those moments, Bill wept for the granddaughter he would never hold again, tears mingling with the island rain as he lay across the leaf-strewn floor beside Liam, cradling his son like a broken bird. Yet Bill's resolve hardened. He owed it to Liam and to Luna's memory to find a way off the island. On the third dawn after the crash, he fashioned a distress signal from oily tar he found dripping from the plane's engine and draped it across the sandy cove in bold letters, "Help," hoping passing cargo ships or reconnaissance flights would see it. He climbed a rocky outcrop to survey the horizon, scanning for smoke, for sails, for anything that signified human presence beyond the seething sea. He hunted for material to construct a simple raft, lashed logs with fine rope, and tested its buoyancy in the surf, his broken ribs screaming, but he refused to yield. Through every fevered dream, through every temptation to surrender to despair, Bill's conviction grew. He would not let Liam's second chance be squandered by the island's isolation. Liam had survived a near-fatal gunshot, battled a brain tumor, and endured a trauma Bill himself had orchestrated. He would not allow nature to finish what greed had begun. On the fifth day, a low-flying military reconnaissance plane cut through the morning haze, and Bill's not-bitten hands raised a shimmering piece of aluminum from the jet's fuselage, signaling frantically. The aircraft banked, circled, and dropped a survival kit before speeding away, unaware of the father's fractured body propped beneath the makeshift canopy. Inside the kit was a radio beacon, enough food for a week, and a medical field pack that would ease Liam's fevers. Bill's whispered prayer of gratitude spoke for both of them. He rigged the beacon to a slit in the wing's metal skin, activated it, and within hours, an eternity that felt like a lifetime, the distant thunder of helicopter rotors heralded rescue. As medevac lights cut through the jungle gloom, Bill lowered Liam's unconscious form into the waiting net, hands trembling but determined, and then he let them winch him up, every inch of victory over guilt and nature's fury. Liam was evacuated to a secure hospital facility within 40 hours, and Bill, his injuries splinted and stabilized, followed by private chopper. In the sterile corridors of the intensive care unit, he watched over his son's sleep, the boy's breath now calm, each rise and fall a testament to their shared ordeal. But though the Pacific's vast expanse lay behind them, Bill knew that the true journey had only just begun. Haunted by Luna's spirit and the trial he had subjected Liam to, Bill resolved to unearth the full truth of Grace Buckingham's experimental protocol. to expose the manipulated records, to demand accountability from the secretive backers, and to atone for the sins of ambition that had nearly cost his son and others their very selves. In the quiet hours before dawn, Bill pressed a gentle kiss to Liam's forehead, whispered promises of transparency and protection, and vowed that the legacy he would build would be one not of headlines and power, but of honesty, redemption, and the unwavering bond between father and son. And though the island would forever remain a dark memory etched into his soul, it had shown him the fragility of life and the fierce necessity of compassion, lessons he intended to carry forward with every beat of Liam's heart. Before takeoff, Grace Buckingham's steely determination led her to slip into the private medical jet's cargo hold under cover of night and fasten a covert GPS tracking device beneath the gurney where Liam Spencer lay sedated and vulnerable, her palm trembling only as she activated the miniature beacon, an SOS transmitter disguised as part of the avionics, to ensure that, no matter where the experimental post-op regimen carried him, she would know every up and down of his progress. As the engines roared to life and the sleek craft climbed into a starlit sky bound for Montana's remote wilderness research center, Grace allowed herself a moment of triumph, convinced that her secret surveillance would provide the data she needed to validate her controversial Phase 2 protocol. Yet fate twisted her plans into catastrophe. Halfway over the rugged peaks, the pilot's urgent tone crackled through the cabin, where registering critical engine fluctuations. "We'll attempt an emergency landing," and within seconds, turbulence ripped through the fuselage as the jet careened off its intended course, tearing at the undercarriage before smashing through a stand of pines and shredding its wings against a rocky outcrop at 10,000 feet. Bill Spencer, thrown against the bulkhead, snapped awake with a bone-jarring crash, adrenaline throwing him into motion as he fumbled for the broken gurney straps and cradled Liam's inert form while shards of glass glittered like fractured stars around them. Deep in the Montana wilderness, amid the low moan of the wind through jagged mountain passes, Grace's hidden tracker sprang to life, beaming a distress signal that punched through the static of federal satellites and set off a national manhunt within minutes. The image of Liam's patient ID and Bill's last known coordinates blazed across every law enforcement dashboard from the FBI to the U.S. Marshals, triggering a manhunt so vast it mobilized helicopters, drones, canine units, and ground teams fan-shaped across the Rockies. As avalanche-like rumors of kidnapping swirled through the media, Finn Finnegan, driven by paternal concern and professional integrity, climbed into a chartered helicopter with Hope Logan and Steffi Forrester at his side, each of them grappling with guilt and fear that the man they once trusted, Bill, had thrust his own son into peril for ulterior motives. Hovering over the crash site, Finn's heart pounded as he spotted twisted metal and faint wisps of smoke drifting from a grove of fir trees, and with practiced urgency, he rappelled down to the wreckage, uncovering Bill's bruised face and Liam's shallow breaths beneath blankets drenched with sweat. "Dad? Dad, can you hear me?" Finn's voice trembled as he risked exposing Liam to relief before turning to Steffi and Hope. "We've got to stabilize him and call for evac." Yet the forest around them echoed with the distant thunder of federal helicopters closing in. While ground teams fanned out in search of the crash, commands crackled over radios demanding Bill's immediate apprehension for unlawful confinement of a minor. Bill, half-dazed by fractured ribs and adrenaline, met Finn's gaze with a raw mix of shame and defiance, knowing that every second Liam remained conscious under his care was a reprieve from the handcuffs tightening around his fate. As Hope knelt beside the gurney, fashioning a makeshift four-line from emergency supplies and tracing the drug protocols hidden in Grace's medical pack, Steffi stood guard at the perimeter, scanning the tree line for uniforms and the glare of searchlights, her instincts barreling between loyalty to Liam and the realization that Bill's actions might forever fracture the intertwined destinies of the Spencer and Forrester clans. The three rallied around Bill in an unspoken pact. Find a way to keep Liam alive. Find a way to stall federal forces until the truth, however damning, could win a reprieve for a desperate father. Find a way to rescue a boy whose life hung between the experimental promise Grace had sold and the stark peril of isolation in the high-altitude wilderness. Below them, a yellow retiree helicopter touched down with a low whine. FBI agents in tactical vests pouring out, weapons raised, radios blaring orders to secure the site and take Bill into custody for attempted child abduction. Bill rose to his unsteady feet, wincing as pain lanced through his side, cradling Liam's weight against his chest, trembling as he spoke. "He's my son. You want to arrest me, you'll have to take him in my arms." The agents hesitated, torn between their duty and the sight of a wounded child whose eyelids fluttered in fevered dreams. Hope seized the moment. "Listen," she said, voice firm against the wind. "Liam's in critical condition. If you remove him from this makeshift care, he could die before he ever reaches a hospital. We need time and medevac to stabilize him." In that tension, the federal pursuit paused, protocols clashing with compassion, and as night deepened, the agents formed a loose perimeter, allowing Finn and Hope to administer emergency oxygen and rehydrate Liam, while Steffi scoured the wreckage for a satellite phone. Bill, one hand pressing against his side, unwrapped layers of torn flight manual and tentative copter logs, realizing the crash had also crippled their primary comms. His pulse thundered not just with pain, but with the creeping dread of losing everything, his freedom, his empire, and the trust of those he loved. He locked eyes with Finn, whose jaw was set in unwavering determination, and whispered, "Thank you, just get him back to health. I'll face whatever comes." Across the dark expanse, the SOS beacon pulsed and Grace's tracker continued to triangulate their position, oblivious to the havoc unleashed by her covert installation. Dawn found the mountaintop drenched in cold light, the frozen ground shimmering under a pale sun as National Guard helicopters arrived, their blades whipping the air with bone-chilling gusts. Medics rappelled down alongside more agents, the staccato commands blending with the frantic beeps of Liam's vitals. Hope and Finn worked in tandem, Finn monitoring Liam's neurological response, Hope adjusting the IV's electrolytes, while Steffi used shards of plexiglass to etch a signal, "Help," into the snow for aerial view. Bill, leaning against a fractured wing, felt every strain of his broken body bristle with the burden of his choices. He had whisked his son away in a bid to guarantee experimental treatment, but now his gamble had put Liam's life and his own liberty on the razor's edge. As medics finally transferred Liam onto a UH-60 Blackhawks hoist, the agents bracketed Bill with cuffs clinking. "You're under arrest for kidnapping. You have the right to remain silent." Bill's gaze stayed fixed on Liam, whose small hand fluttered with each gust of wind, before he lifted his voice over the rotor wash. "I'll see you in court," he croaked, tears streaking through grime. Finn soared down beside Liam's cradle, cutting the harness and sealing his father's promise. "I'll fight for him, legally, medically, whatever it takes." Hope and Steffi joined him, their collective resolve hardening into a singular mission: rescue the boy, uncover Grace's hidden agenda, and preserve Liam's chance at a future unscripted by the deceit that had endangered him. As the helicopter lifted them toward the trauma unit waiting in Salt Lake City, Bill remained on his knees in the snow, handcuffed yet unbroken, haunted by the chilling echo of Luna's last plea for compassion, and aware that his reckoning would stretch far beyond his visit to the hospital, into courtrooms, boardrooms, and the fragile hearts of everyone who dared love him. In the vast sweep of the Rocky Mountains, where silent peaks watched over their flight, the fate of the Spencer and Forrester names now hinged on a race against time, to save a son, exonerate a father, and reveal the truth buried beneath the wreckage of ambition and loyalty.